Number 10. Mystique. Wolverine has been around for a long time, so it's no surprise that this is a love interest I constantly forget about, but that exists. Mystique has of course also been around for a long time, and is possibly even older than Wolverine. So of course at some point in these characters' history, they had to have worked together and of course slept together. When it comes to Wolverine and Mystique, these two actually go way back, all the way back to the Wild Wild West. It was then that Logan and Raven seemingly first met, and even teamed up together. It could have been them against the world, but of course what usually happens with Raven when it comes to romance also happened during her time with Wolverine. Ultimately, Raven betrayed Logan, putting herself first, and it was because of this that the two ended things, and on a pretty sour note. She also ended things by kicking him out of a moving train car, so yeah. Logan's memory isn't always the greatest, but something that he wouldn't soon forget was how untrustworthy Mystique was. Even to this day, he's like, "You suck, Mystique. Also, you're gonna be lonely because you're always betraying everyone." Number 9. Maureen. She might not be from the main continuity, but Maureen had such a profound and life-changing effect on Old Man Logan that even after she and their children together were tragically murdered by the Hulk gang, Old Man Logan never once forgot about her. He even later asks a returned loved, MARIKO, to look out for Maureen, who herself, after more than a lifetime of tragedy and literally going to hell and back, is finally trying to live a normal and peaceful life. MARIKO, that is, not Maureen, who is dead in Old Man Logan's timeline. Old Man Logan set aside some money so that MARIKO could keep an eye on younger Maureen and ideally try to protect her moving forward, as he knew that if her life continued the way it had in his timeline, it would end in tragedy. He was like, I just love her so much, I just want her to be okay. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want even more Wolverine love interests, I'm pretty sure I could do 10 more. There's a lot of them out there. Be sure to let us know that you love this list by giving it a thumbs up. Can't give it a thumbs down because that doesn't exist anymore, so just thumbs up, please. What a world we live in where we can't dislike things. Number 8. Rose O'Hara. Rose was Wolverine's first love, and for most of his life was seemingly unrequited. In the Marvel Noir universe, she is also one of his main love interests. Rose is probably the reason why Wolverine tends to have a thing for redheads, actually, although that might be a foggier part of his memory and he might not always remember that. Honestly, at this point, I'm surprised that Logan can even remember what day it is or what his phone number is without having it written down somewhere. That's just how much he's had his brain and his memories scrambled. Rose was brought in from town to be a companion to young James Howlett, aka Kid Wolverine, when he was growing up on his parents' estate. Also, just to be clear, he wasn't known as Kid Wolverine, but you know, we know him as Wolverine now, so he was a kid. You know what I'm saying. Rose was also tasked with looking after James, as he was known for being a weak and often sickly child. Rose died tragically when she ended up trying to get involved in a fight between Logan and his childhood rival, who had returned years later, Dog. It was implied then, as she lay dying, that she perhaps also did have feelings for James at some point. Wow, what a time to find that out. Unlike many of Wolverine's other love interests, Rose has not yet returned from the dead. At least, not yet, anyways. Maybe later, who knows. A lot of them do, a lot of them come back to life. Number 7. Yukio. Yukio has been both a lover and a friend to Wolverine, as well as acted as the adopted mother of his adopted daughter, EMIKO. Yukio first met Wolverine during her time working as an assassin for Clan Yashida. Initially, she was Wolverine's enemy, as she actually worked for the head of the clan, Lord Shinjin, who wanted to shame and kill Logan. Yukio would develop an attraction to Wolverine, but at the time he was basically hung up on MARIKO Yashida, the daughter of Lord Shinjin, so nothing came of it. However, it was because of her feelings for Wolverine that Yukio would ultimately decide to help save MARIKO's life later on, despite the fact that MARIKO was kinda like her romantic rival for Logan's affections. Yukio is also known for being close friends with Storm and a possibly implied romantic interest of Aurora's as well. At least that's how I see it. I feel like maybe not everybody sees those implications. But I don't know, I think I would ship Storm and Yukio, just like I would also ship Wolverine and Yukio. And just like I would also ship Storm and Wolverine. It's a nice little triangle. Little love triangle there. Number 6. Silver Fox. Silver Fox has become a complicated character since her original story as Wolverine's lover. Silver Fox is a member of the Blackfoot tribe and is Canadian. When Wolverine met her, she had recently been widowed and as such began a relationship with Logan, who had recently been accepted into living with her tribe. Silver Fox, however, would tragically die at the hands of Sabretooth, Wolverine's arch nemesis, and a vicious man and a vicious mutant. Later on, however, this act would also end up being tied to Romulus, who apparently influenced Sabretooth and did a lot of brainwash shenanigans regarding the memories of her death and who was believed to have been behind it. Wolverine would end up attacking the people of Mount Logan and blaming them for her death because Romulus had him brainwashed to believe that that's what happened, despite Sabretooth having taken credit for killing Silver Fox, and doing so in front of Logan. Silver Fox would also later seemingly return, but it's more likely that this version of her associated with Weapon X, Team X, and Hydra was actually some kind of clone or was an agent who was simply brainwashed and manipulated into thinking that she was the true Silver Fox. Yeah, Silver Fox became really complicated, but she used to be very simple. Number 5. TYGER. One of my favorite of Wolverine's romantic interests has to be TYGER, who is long known as one of the main crime lords of Madripoor. Before that, she was Jessin Hoan, who ended up being kidnapped by the Reavers and later saved by the X-Men. When Jessin learned that Madripoor crime lord Roche was behind the Reavers' attack, which had pretty much completely uprooted and dramatically altered her life moving forward, she dedicated her life to usurping and defeating him, taking up the mantle TYGER, or taking up the name TYGER really. That's how we know her now. Wolverine would later learn of Tiger's true identity as Jessin Hoan and would pledge himself to her cause, eventually working as her personal bodyguard while in his patch persona. During this time, Wolverine would also become a somewhat casual lover to Tiger as the two continued to grow closer together. And I love them together, I just think they're so cute. Number 4. Itsu. Itsu was Wolverine's wife at one point many years ago when he was training with the Master Bando Saburo. The two fell in love, were married, and Itsu even became pregnant with Logan's child. For a brief time they were happy, until Logan accidentally stabbed a fellow member of the community with his claws. As a result, he was forced to leave, exiled, but when he went to say goodbye to Itsu, he only found her dead. Years later it would be revealed that Bucky Barnes as the Winter Soldier was actually the one responsible for her death, seemingly manipulated into killing her under Romulus's orders. Oh, Romulus, pulling all these strings and then just disappearing. Their unborn child was also stolen from Itsu's womb, and due to the child's mutant gene, which would also grant him a healing factor, survived. This child would grow up to be Akahiro, aka Daken, Wolverine's troublesome son, who was manipulated into thinking his father had killed his mother before abandoning him. And I'll just let you guess who made him believe that. If you can't guess, it was Romulus. Romulus did everything. And also nothing. Number 3. Jean Grey. Despite these two often not ending up together throughout stories told of them across various mediums, the fact remains that Wolverine will likely always carry a torch somewhat for Jeannie. Jean Grey and Wolverine are generally both never in the right place to end up together, and oftentimes their love story, if they do end up having one in whichever canon or narrative that we're talking about here, ends up being tainted with tragedy. The fact remains, however, that both Logan and Jean often count on one another to do what's right, and even turn to one another when they need someone to lean on in a time of need. Even when Jean is dead, Wolverine still has been known to fight for her honor, and when she has been alive, Wolverine has also been the one to kill her more than once. Needless to say, their relationship is way more than complicated. Number 2. Mariko Yashida. At this point, Mariko has had a long and somewhat convoluted story, but initially in the comics she was simply the daughter of Japanese crime lord Shinjin Harada, who ruled over Clan Yashida. Mariko would end up meeting Wolverine when the X-Men asked her brother, the mutant Sunfire, for help. While initially kinda scared of Wolverine, eventually the two would fall for one another, both admiring the differences of the other and also sharing a sense of kindness. Mariko would end up forcibly married off by her father and in a relationship where she was pretty badly mistreated. However, she felt compelled to stay in that marriage due to a sense of honor to her family. Eventually, however, MARIKO would become free again and would even take over as the leader of Clan YASHIDA in her father's place. For a time, her and Wolverine were engaged, with her not wanting to be married until she had removed all the criminal ties from her family. In the end, however, MARIKO would die in a criminal gang war before she could end up marrying Logan. MARIKO ended up poisoned, and Logan helped her death to be less painful at MARIKO's behest by making it a lot more brief. Logan would punish her killer by visiting him every year and slicing off a piece of him until he died. This wouldn't be the end of MARIKO's story though, as she would continue to pop up as the forced tormentor of Wolverine in Hell, and later resurrected as Gorgon's Scarlet Samurai. Basically another lover that we just couldn't leave dead, because yeah. I also love when Wolverine comes to Hell and is like, alright, I'll free you though, MARIKO, and she's like, nah, I'm good. Just remember me as I was. I don't want to go back. Like what? They could have had a happy ending there. Oh well. Number 1. Storm. Storm has always been a close friend of Wolverine's and is sometimes known for being his romantic partner as well, especially more recently in the comics. Depending on the reality we're talking about, there have also been universes where these two are firmly cemented as a romantic couple. Even in modern comics, with all the history they have shared as teammates, close friends, and romantic interests, these two's chemistry still manages to surface, and even today they get pretty awesome flirty moments written in for them, like during the Ten of Swords Otherworld tournament when the two faced off in a drinking contest against one another. The best thing about that too was that they both held their own and proved they could match each other. That's the thing about Storm and Wolverine. Both are incredibly strong, both as superheroes and as individuals, which is just a small part of why they work so well together. They're very, like, evenly matched, which I like.
And at 10, Tina McGee. Tina McGee was a scientist who worked at Star Labs and a friend of Barry Allen in the 90s television series. Basically, for those of you who watch the current series, she was this show's Caitlin Snow. She helped Barry Allen deal with his super speed powers, eventually by giving him a special suit that was modified into a superhero costume when Barry became the Flash. This version of the character is exclusive to the continuity of the television series The Flash and is an adaptation of Tina McGee. The original character was created by Mike Baron and Jackson Geis and first appeared in The Flash Volume 2 number 3 and was played by Amanda Pays, who plays Christina McGee on the current CW Flash as well, which I personally think is a great reference. In the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover, however, John Wesley Shipp Jr. reprises his role as Barry Allen from that 90s series once more, as he did in the previous crossover Elseworlds, to bring this character's story to a close. When sacrificing himself on the antimatter cannon's treadmill, it's revealed that this version of Barry went on to marry this version of Tina McGee. And at 9, Linda Park. A tragic tale. An instant before the Flashpoint altered reality, Linda's children, Jay and Irie West, were sucked into the dark multiverse by a tide of dark matter. Wally attempted to save them, but was too late. Dr. Manhattan removed 10 years from the history of DC, which included all of Linda's relationships with Wally and Jay and Irie's birth. Linda's memories of her family were erased while Wally was trapped in the Speed Force. When Wally was able to briefly escape the Speed Force, he tried to get to Linda, his lightning rod, to remember him so that he could permanently escape, but she couldn't and thus was pulled back in. Wally was eventually able to leave the Speed Force for good though, with the help of his mentor and uncle Barry Allen. He reunited with his old friends the Titans, where he found he was able to restore their memories of him with a touch, but that Linda was mysteriously immune to this. And at 8, EMIKO Queen. EMIKO Emmy Queen is the current Red Arrow, a master archer and a vigilante who runs around wielding a bow. She is the Green Arrow's half-sister and partner, well, like vigilante partner. And she is also the assassin Shadow's daughter. EMIKO was born to Robert Queen and Shadow on Starfish Island. However, as a baby, she was kidnapped by her father's protege turned enemy, Simon LaCroix. Not the dude who invented the soda though. Better known as Komodo. LaCroix would train EMIKO for years with the Outsiders Arrow clan, leading her to believe that he was her father. After Robin had offered for her to join the team, EMIKO agreed to join on the condition that if her team does not convince her, she can leave. The team formed by Robin, Kid Flash, Jin, Roadhouse, and Crush had no training, but EMIKO saw potential in them and decided to stay as Robin's right hand. hand. This is where Wally would develop a slight crush on her, despite her having a crush on Nightwing. After their encounter with Deathstroke goes awry though, leading her to kill the assassin, EMIKO leaves the team. And at 7, Raven. Raven is the daughter and herald of the demon Trigon and a member of the Teen Titans. The woman later known as Raven was born to the demon Trigon, a demonic entity who had conquered many worlds and fathered many sons. However, this was his first and so far only daughter. Trigon murdered the women who birthed his sons, however he allowed this daughter's mother to live, believing that his daughter needed to be raised by a human in order to help her reshape the underrealms in his image. For some reason. Afraid of what Trigon had in store for their daughter, Raven's mother took her and fled to the dimension of Azarath, which was beyond Trigon's reach, where she named her child Rachel. But over time, the monks of the realm trained Rachel to control her powers and overcome her father's influence. And at 6, Mina Dewan. Mina Dewan was a Star Labs scientist who was struck during the Speed Force storm in Central City, giving her superhuman speed. As Fast Track, she worked with the Flash to train a new generation of speedsters to use their powers at Star Labs. After the Speed Force storm on Central City, Dewan was appointed the director of the new Speed Force testing center in Star Labs. When the Flash and August came to visit, she revealed that she had also been struck by lightning during the Speed Force storm and had gotten similar powers. She started working with the Flash to train a new generation of speedsters. She took on the name of Fast Track, and after talking to the Flash and training the speedster Avery Ho, they ran into Iron Heights to check on 3 speedsters the Flash and August had apprehended. When there, they found August injured on the floor, and the other speedsters slaughtered on the ground, having gotten their speed taken from them. August told them that it was all Godspeed's work. I am the god of speed. Halfway through and at number 5, Jesse Wells. By the way, editor, you don't need to put the dash Wally. That was just for me. In the case of the Arrowverse, Jesse Wells was Jessie Quick, a speedster from Earth 2. She was the daughter of one of the most brilliant scientists, Harrison Wells. A college student on her Earth, Jessie was abducted by Zoom in a plot to turn her father against Team Flash, until being rescued and forced to temporarily relocate to Earth 1. After being hit by a dark matter wave from the Star Labs particle accelerator, Jessie gradually managed to unlock her Speed Force connection, becoming a metahuman speedster and superhero badass. After helping Team Flash defeat Grodd and his guerrilla army, she decided to move to Earth 1 permanently with Wally West, whom she was dating until they broke up. After learning Savitar had plans for her though, Jessie left Earth 1 to take over for Jay Garrick as the Flash of Earth 3, until Barry Allen was destroyed and Jay returned from the Speed Force. Jessie then returned to Earth 2 to continue her heroics and lead on her team. However, her and Wally did end up getting back together, as we see when Wally comes back and Barry realizes who Savitar is in like that same episode. Like he comes back, they ask him, how was Earth 2? Or how was Earth 3? One of the two. They ask him how visiting Jessie was. Then Barry realizes who Savitar was in one of the later episodes back in season 3. On December 10th, 2019, after Earth 2's destruction in the wave of antimatter, Jessie was soon confirmed to have been killed, along with the rest of Earth 2's population, aside from Laurel Lance of Earth 2. After Oliver Queen's sacrifice to recreate the multiverse though, it is unknown if she was resurrected. And at 4, Felicity Smoak. After Cyrus Gold stole a centrifuge from Queen Consolidated in order to make more Mirakuru serum for Slade Wilson, Barry extrapolated a logical but unbelievable explanation about the thief being superpowered by merely looking at the crime scene, which ended up being true. Felicity realized that he knew more about the case than they did, and he enlisted his help, telling Barry that Oliver wanted to keep this investigation in-house. During the course of their time together though, Felicity exhibited signs of being attracted to Barry, though she was still clearly uncomfortable when he mentioned his admiration of the Arrow and his theory that the Vigilante had partners, particularly one versed in computer science. You know, it was her. Barry seemed to like her back, and though he was briefly surprised to learn that Felicity spent her nights with Oliver, even though at the time it was due to them working together as vigilantes, they still kissed after she helped him on a case while he was the street. But they decided it was better not to date because they were pining after the people they'd eventually marry. Well, they didn't know that they were gonna marry them, but they were still pining after people they couldn't have at the time, so they're like, yeah, no, let's not do this. And at 3, Jessica Cruz. Jessica Cruz inherited the ring of the Crime Syndicate's Power Ring, becoming the new Power Ring briefly before becoming another Green Lantern of Earth. After getting taken over by a Yellow Lantern ring, she was able to fight off the influence, allying herself with the Justice League. The Flash called in Hal Jordan, Earth's first Green Lantern, to teach Jessica how to stay in control of her Yellow Lantern ring. But with Hal's help, Jessica mastered mastered the use of the former ring. When Grail summoned the Black Racer, the new god of death, to kill the Flash, Jessica maintained enough control of her body to jump in the path of the Black Racer and seemingly kill herself to save the Flash. The Black Racer though managed to kill the entity in her ring, controlling her, causing her power ring to crumble apart on her finger. For her ability to overcome fear, Jessica was actually tracked down and bestowed a Green Lantern ring, becoming Earth's newest Green Lantern, and recently is one of the more popular love interests of the Flash, with the exception of number 1. But ultimately, in number 2, Patty Spivot. Patty Spivot in the Arrowverse is a former police detective of the Central City Police Department, formerly an officer and a former member of the Anti-Metahuman Task Force. She is also the daughter of a late unnamed man and the ex-girlfriend of Barry Allen. She is commonly thought to be the best fit for the Grant Gustin Flash, but after Barry and Patty got close, Patty realized that there was something Barry wasn't telling her. After the Turtle kidnapped Patty, Patty decided to leave Central City and go to college at Midway City University to become a CSI, like she always wanted. A few days before she left, Patty discovered that Barry was the Flash by connecting his cases to the fact that he always knew what had happened, like he had been there, and she told Joe about it, who told Barry to talk to her, although Barry was hesitant. Right before she left though, she visited Barry and told him that if he was the Flash, he should just tell her and then she would stay in Central City to be with him. Though Barry decided to make a sacrifice and let her go to pursue her dream. Then, because she wanted to prove that Barry was the Flash to herself, she called Barry while she was on the train to school, lying and saying that there was a man with so Barry came running as the Flash, which finally proved to her that she was right. This didn't change her decision to go to college though, as Barry left the train and she stayed on, which eventually led to, in at number 1, Iris West. In the comic books, Iris West Allen is the wife of the second Flash, Barry Allen, and the aunt to the third Flash, Wally West, although in the TV show, Wally and Iris are brother and sister. She is a reporter for the Central City news outlet Picture News, and while she may be the most well-known Barry Allen or Flash love interest, how can we not include one of the most iconic love stories that spans across seemingly every single goddamn timeline? Like, even the one where Barry was literally the villain, like in Reverse Flashpoint during Armageddon Part 4. In the comics though, Iris was born in the 30th century to Eric and Fran Russell, and was sent to the 20th century as an infant, where she was raised by the West family. Although she was never told that she was adopted, she had always suspected it, and because of her curiosity about digging up her origins, she grew up digging for the truth. So she became an award-winning writer for her school newspaper. Then she went to Columbia University and had an internship at the Daily Planet. She needed a break though, so she moved to Central City, where she got a job as a reporter for the Picture News, and after many unsuccessful relationships, she met police scientist Barry Allen while reporting a suspected murder that she was investigating, and then they began to go out. She was charmed by his honesty and stability, and then one night Barry proposed to her while riding on the Ferris wheel at Central City Amusement Park. You gotta admit, Barry, not that original. I mean, like, filling your apartment with like 100 fire hazards like you did in the show, that's better than a Ferris wheel. And I mean, like, singing a custom song that the show had written for a musical episode to propose to her again after she took off the ring because she realized that part of why you proposed was to change her fate with Savitar, that was better.
Number 10, Carol Danvers. While this one never became a tried and true relationship, there was a kind of strange but interesting time that these two went on a date. Now, how did this happen? Well, Spider-Man agreed to do a favor for Carol, but in exchange, blurted out that he wanted a date with her. The date itself is super awkward and terrible, but as such proves to make for a pretty hilarious read. You can check it out in Miss Marvel issue 47. Both Carol and Peter struggle to find anything to talk about over a dinner at a nice restaurant. The dinner is then interrupted by evil Hammer agents who are dealt with before the two finish off the night eating junk food together on a rooftop. It actually ends on a nice note, with the two realizing the awkwardness was likely coming from the fact that they were both too concerned with impressing one another. Other than a few cute and infrequent moments of flirting between the two, this relationship has never really been revisited, but it's safe to say that Carol and Peter will always respect and care for one another, even if they aren't currently getting romantic together. Number 9, Betty Brant. Betty Brant was the secretary of J. Jonah Jameson. She and Peter met through their jobs at the Daily Bugle, and after an incident with Betty where Peter disguised as Spider-Man saved her life, he realized that he had feelings for her. They dated for some time, but their relationship ended when Betty suspected that Peter might have feelings for one of his fellow classmates. It turned out that this was all a misunderstanding, but regardless, Betty ended up moving on, dating and eventually marrying Peter's friend and co-worker, Ned Leeds, who of course also worked at the Bugle. Despite no longer being together, Betty has always considered Peter one of her best and most reliable friends. Number 8. Carly Cooper. After MJ and Peter's marriage was over and done with, Peter slowly ended up moving on. Carly Cooper was one of the first women he ended up with after MJ and he ended things. Carly was a forensic specialist who ended up going on a few dates with Peter, and eventually, after much humming and hawing, the two ended up as a couple for a time. In fact, it was Mary Jane herself who helped the two get together, making Carly see that what was holding Peter back from committing to their relationship really was himself, and helping Peter to see the same. The relationship didn't last, unfortunately, as Peter's life as a vigilante, as Spider-Man, ended up wedging the two of them apart, and they broke up. Carly has been hot and cold with Peter since then, sometimes his friend and confidant, and sometimes wanting nothing to do with him. Number 7. Silver Sable. These two never really got a chance to explore a relationship, but Silver Sable is definitely a love interest that has become popular with fans. Popular enough that she appeared in the PS4 Spider-Man game DLC content Silver Lining, where sparks between the two characters flew. In the comics, Silver Sable is a well-trained mercenary and owner of the company Silver Sable International. Silver Sablenova is from the small fictional Eastern European country of Simkaria, and is known for being an ally of Spider-Man. She is one tough cookie you do not want to mess with. Silver Sable only ever flirted with Spider-Man, and then revealed her feelings for him only somewhat when they thought the world was ending. Number 6. Silk. These two instantly had a very magnetic and physical attraction to one another. Spider-Man learned that Cindy Moon was another spider person / spider totem who had been holed up in a bunker for years in order to protect her from the villain Morlun. He freed Cindy from the bunker. I mean, she could have left at any time really, but she didn't because she knew the risk, by giving her the information that Morlun had been defeated. Both immediately had a strong and unexplainable attraction to one another, which could in theory have been caused by the fact that it was revealed that they were both bitten by the same radioactive spider, which granted them their abilities. They had a very physically intimate relationship during their time together due to their off-of-the-charts pheromone attraction to one another. And Silk still remains an ally of Peter's. Number 5. Kitty Pryde. In the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, a young Kitty and Peter had a budding romance that many fans enjoyed. The two got together after ending relationships with their current partners, Kitty breaking up with Iceman and Peter breaking up with Mary Jane. Most of their time together was spent taking down criminals, and as such, Kitty was forced to wear a mask costume to prevent anyone from recognizing her and piecing together Spider-Man's secret identity. These two were super cute together, as both of them are kind of awkward yet charming characters. Like with most of Peter's relationships, his need to protect his secret identity ended up being the force to drive them apart, as this also meant that the two had to keep their romantic relationship secret, lest people somehow use that to figure out that Kitty and Peter were the pair of masked vigilantes. Though in the end, it was Peter getting back with Mary Jane that really put an end to their relationship. Although Kitty never really stopped having feelings for Peter, even after he was dead. Number 4. Spider-Gwen. While Spider-Gwen is obviously not a love interest for Peter Parker, whom this list has mostly been about, she is the main love interest for another famous and popular Spider-Man, Miles Morales. And Spider-Gwen and Miles are so cute together, I just had to include them. Their love for one another is so strong that it crosses universes, with Spider-Gwen being from Earth 65, whereas Miles was originally from Earth 1610. These two met and developed feelings for one another, but decided to stay friends. For now anyways. Although the two did witness a potential future where they ended up married with superpowered kids on Earth 8. Number 3. Black Cat. Felicia Hardy is one of the fan favorites when it comes to Spider-Man's most famous love interests. Black Cat almost instantly fell for Spider-Man upon him chasing her down. She is sometimes a criminal, sometimes a hero, and sometimes a neutral party in the Marvel-verse. The two have dated and flirted on and off for years, but it's usually Felicia's obsession with Peter's Spider-Man persona, her jealousy, and her sometimes criminal ways that gets between the two. Though the two have also broken up over other things. like when Spider-Man was kind of worried about Black Cat's safety as a non-powered vigilante. This concern actually inspired Felicia to get powers, which she obtained from the shady villain Wilson Fisk, aka Kingpin. Needless to say, she was forced to keep the origins of powers themselves a secret from Peter, while her powers themselves also made her and Spider-Man's relationship more difficult, as it turned out she ended up with bad luck powers, which infected her enemies and those closest to her, which includes Peter Parker. Just her luck. Number 2, Gwen Stacy. Gwen will always be one of the big love interests for Peter because she was one of his first loves, and the one he lost the most dramatically. The loss of Uncle Ben and Gwen Stacy have haunted Peter for years, and often still do haunt him today. Peter Parker's story as Spider-Man is nothing without that loss and that feeling of responsibility. It is what has weighed him down while also inspiring him to be a hero, and it has shaped him into the person he is today. Originally, Gwen and Peter both bonded over their love of science, and she fell for him. The death of her father caused a rift in their relationship as Gwen blamed Spider-Man, not knowing that Peter himself was Spider-Man. While also resenting Peter for being so absent around her time of mourning, because, he was Spider-Man, so he was off doing Spider-Man stuff. Peter had promised her father right before he died to protect Gwen, and yet, while trying to save her, she died. The fateful panel where he manages to secure her falling body with his webbing is often pointed to when it comes to why Spider-Man blames himself. Whether or not she was dead before Spider-Man managed to grab her, that fateful snap of her neck will always haunt him and readers. Gwen represents for Peter what could have been. She will always make him wonder, inspire him to be better, and he will always love her. Number 1, Mary Jane. While Mary Jane may have initially lost out with Peter to Gwen when Peter and MJ were in that school year love triangle, Mary Jane was the character left standing at the very end, and as such, ended up with Peter. But really, what keeps these two so close is more than that. More than just that convenience. Not only is Mary Jane stunning, but she is kind, empathetic, and really seems to understand Peter in a way no one else does. Sure, she can't always be with him because understanding someone doesn't mean you can always stand them, but the two are usually guaranteed to always get back together. Mary Jane will always be there for Peter and proud to know him, and he'll always admire her boldness and her commitment to do what's right. Both will always love one another and, in a way, be one another's heroes.
Number 10, Barbara Gordon. So this one has a weird and complicated history with fans. You see, it all started during Batman Beyond, which is an amazing animated series. If you haven't seen it, watch that right now. It was hinted that Bruce and Barbara, aka Batgirl, had a romantic past. Fans really didn't know how to think about that, but they just kind of let it slide, because what else? But didn't stop there. In the animated film adaptation of the comic book The Killing Joke, the two took their relationship to the next level. Now, a lot of fans just attribute this relationship to Bruce Timm, who was the creator of the whole, DCAU, DC Animated Universe, and he was a producer on the Killing Joke animated film. For some reason, he just really wanted to see those characters together. Regardless, I just don't think that this is a relationship that fans will ever really get on board with. But it had to be on the list. Number 9, Chase Meridian. Chase is a psychologist and was introduced in the film Batman Forever. She was played by Nicole Kidman when Val Kilmer was Batman. Now, regardless of what you think of this film, one of the things that everyone agrees on is that they really enjoyed Chase. She had a really interesting and complex relationship with both Bruce and Batman. She eventually figured out, that the two were the same person. She only appeared in one film, but in 2013 she did make her debut in the comics. It would have been interesting to see where they would have taken her as a character and her relationship with Bruce, but unfortunately that never ended up happening. Batman and Robin ended up happening, and we all know how that turned out. Number 8, Talia al Ghul. This is probably one of the more complex relationships of Batman's career, if you could even call it a relationship at all. So Batman has never trusted the League of Assassins. That's not, new information. But he has tried to work with Talia from time to time. But the thing is, Talia wanted a kid. In her eyes, a kid with Batman would be the perfect combination. They ended up having a kid together, Damian Wayne. Although it's kind of implied that she drugged Batman and that's how Damian happened. I think all fans agree that this is definitely not one of Bruce's healthiest relationships. Number 7, Wonder Woman. Sometimes office romances happen, even with superheroes. that is what happened here. You see, Batman and Wonder Woman are both founding members of the Justice League, and the two of them spend a lot of time together, so it should come as no surprise that they ended up dating just for a little bit. I mean, they even kissed during the Justice League animated cartoon. And there's definitely some flirtation between Bruce and Diana in the DCEU. I mean, we saw it briefly in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, and we didn't really see it in the theatrical release Justice League film. I mean, there were hints of it, but we'll probably see a lot more of it in, the Snyder Cut, or Zack Snyder's Justice League as it's now called. But only time will tell with that one. Number 6, Silver St. Cloud. Silver actually has a really interesting history with Bruce. They both have money, and that's how the two of them met. They started dating, and eventually, she found out Bruce was Batman, which seems to be a trend here. And that is actually why it ended. Silver didn't want to see something bad happen to Bruce. If she was with him, she would always have to worry that, he would never come home at night. And that is something she just didn't want to do. Which automatically makes this different than a lot of other people on the list. I wonder if Silver will end up making her way into Matt Reeves' new Batman trilogy. I mean, he has a lot of other characters coming in, but this one would be, kind of something interesting and new. Number 5, Poison Ivy. So lots of people can't resist Poison Ivy. Partly because she can make men fall in love with her with this spell. And that is exactly what happened with Batman. I mean, can you really see Batman just dating her? They have a completely different view on everything. So it wouldn't really work. I mean, and it's not only Batman she has made fall in love with her. It's also Superman as well. So she can literally make anyone fall in love with her. Unless you have those fake lips on like a Batman and Robin, then you're good. Just everyone get some of those fake lips. Because Batman and Robin teaches us a lot. Number 4, Sasha Bordeaux. Sasha was actually Bruce Wayne's former bodyguard. Yeah, even Bruce Wayne needs a bodyguard, guys. She was actually sentenced to Blackgate after her and Bruce were accused of killing Vesper Fairchild, which they actually didn't. But she ended up finding out who Bruce Wayne was, and the two of them actually trained together on multiple occasions. She wanted to become a vigilante, and she ended up going out with Batman to fight crime. Their relationship didn't really last long, but even when she did go to prison, she never ended up giving Bruce his identity, which instantly shows you just how much she cares for him. Number 3, Vicky Vale. Vicky Vale is one of Batman's oldest relationships. She's also one of the more famous ones because she was the one to make her debut in Tim Burton's 1989 film, Batman, starring Michael Keaton, which was a massive success. Vicky is a reporter that works for the Gotham Gazette. Like many others on this list, they weren't together long, but Vicky holds a special place in a lot of Batman's fans' hearts for being the first one to debut on the big screen. She didn't appear in other movies, but it was a big deal when she first showed up in the film. Number 2, Rachel Dawes. Like Chase Meridian, Rachel was first created for the films. Rachel made her debut in Batman Begins, where she was actually played by Katie Holmes, but then she was recasted in The Dark Knight with Maggie Gyllenhaal, which, is the version that people remember more. Rachel has become one of The Dark Knight's most famous love interests because both films she appeared in are considered to be Batman's best film. And she was a childhood friend of Bruce who found out, eventually he was Batman. But they couldn't be together until the world didn't need Batman anymore. She then went on, started dating Harvey Dent during The Dark Knight, and ultimately chose to be with him before, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, she got killed by the Joker. It was a tragic end to their love story because Bruce was ready to give up everything for her. But Rachel will always remain one of his most famous loves, even though, it was kind of brief and ended really badly. Number 1, Catwoman. Was there ever any doubt? Come on, guys. I think everyone predicted this. I think everyone knew that Selena Kyle was going to be number 1 on this list. Her romance with Batman is famous. The two of them have had an on and off again relationship for such a long time and shared a bond that you just don't see with anyone else. They were going to get married, guys. They were going to get married, but Selena left Bruce at the altar saying that he couldn't be Batman and be happy, so she had to leave, which left fans devastated. Come on! Can Bruce ever catch a break? Probably not. Although, some are still holding out hope that they will be together again, and maybe Bruce will finally be happy. Who knows? But it seems like the writers don't want to take him in that general direction because they just want to keep pushing a mopey Batman, which is still a cool version of Batman, but come on. he could be happy. Bruce can be happy, guys.
Coming in at number 10, we have Dr. Pamela Isley, aka Poison Ivy. While this plant-based villain is best known these days as being the healthiest relationship Harley Quinn has ever had, in many early Batman adventures, Ivy had her eye set on the very man trying to stop her schemes. And while there are a few storylines where this attraction was more than one-sided, for the most part, this relationship mostly consisted of Poison Ivy kissing Batman to mind control him and aid in her plant-based plans. And since that's not exactly the most romantic of circumstances, Poison Ivy's going to have to stay as an honorable mention on this list. Coming in at number 9, we have Dina Drake, aka Black Canary. While more closely associated with Green Arrow and the Birds of Prey in the mainstream DC universe, in the highly controversial Frank Miller book All-Star Batman and Robin, Batman and Black Canary let the sparks fly. Literally. After a fight against some henchmen on the docks of Gotham Harbor that sees both costume vigilantes backed into a corner, Batman lights the goons on fire with a Molotov cocktail. Then, with the dock still burning, Black Canary and Batman succumb to their urges and decide to get freaky on a burning pier. As I said, All-Star Batman and Robin is a bit controversial and weird, but hey, this moment's wild enough that Black Canary makes the list. Coming in at number 8, we have Kathy Kane, aka the very first Batwoman. Created by DC Comics in the 1950s to push back against any rumors of Batman and Robin comics secretly promoting a homosexual agenda, Batwoman was the very first romantic partner for Batman in the comics, even getting married on the cover of some notable issues. And while Batwoman has over the decades been fleshed out into becoming a character worthy of standing on her own, this original romance was basically just copy and pasting a lady version of Batman for him to marry so that everyone knew that Batman liked girls. Oh, comic books. Coming in at number 7, we have Silver St. Cloud. A wealthy socialite that became one of Bruce Wayne's primary love interests during the 1980s, Silver was initially only dating the playboy persona Batman puts up as a disguise, but was smart enough to eventually figure out that her boyfriend was actually the Caped Crusader. And while this revelation would eventually lead to the two breaking up, as Silver couldn't bear to see Bruce going off into dangerous situations every night, the two still had a close bond until her tragic death years later at the hands of a serial killer supervillain, because, of course, Batman's history wasn't dark and depressing enough. Coming in at number 6, we have Diana Prince, aka the iconic Wonder Woman. That's right, despite the potential awkwardness of an office romance happening within the Justice League, there have been a few occasions where Wonder Woman and Batman have shown an attraction to each other as more than just friends in the main DC universe, including a moment where they almost kissed on the battlefield against the hordes of Gehenna, but ultimately decided against it as both of them were already in committed relationships at the time. Nevertheless, alternate universe takes like the animated Justice League show have continued to showcase a more flirty side of these two heroes' relationship, and even if they don't wind up together, Wonder Woman and Batman will always have each other's backs. Coming in at number 5, we have Vicky Vale, a reporter for the Gotham Gazette. During an era of DC Comics in which Lois Lane was becoming increasingly popular, Batman was also given a journalist love interest under the name of Vicky Vale, but unfortunately wouldn't be as long-lived or unique as Lois and Clark's love. Nevertheless, Vicky is still a fan favorite in some circles, and notably appeared as Batman's main love interest in the original Tim Burton Batman movie. And hey, if Vicky's good enough for Hollywood, she's good enough for this list. Coming in at number 4, we have Talia al Ghul, the daughter of the Demon. The daughter of the immoral Batman villain Ra's al Ghul, Batman and Talia have found themselves in a forbidden romance over the years, attracted to one another despite the war Batman constantly fights against Ra's al Ghul's plans. To further complicate their relationship, Talia and Bruce actually have a son together in the form form of Damian Wayne, who was created in secrecy through the couple's genetic material and was only revealed to his father at the age of 10. Talia and Bruce haven't been romantic together in many years, but considering Ra's al Ghul is still a dangerous villain, and they still have a son together who operates as the latest Robin, Talia and Bruce's past will definitely cross again in the future. Coming in at number 3, we have Rachel Dawes from the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy. Portrayed by Katie Holmes in Batman Begins and Maggie Gyllenhaal in The Dark Knight, Rachel was this version of Batman's supposed true love, the person that he hoped to someday share a life with once he'd finished his mission as Batman. Unfortunately, this love story would end in tragedy during the events of The Dark Knight, as Rachel was murdered in an explosion by the Joker after tricking Batman into rescuing the wrong person, also causing the birth of the villain Two-Face. Rachel's death would haunt Bruce for the rest of the trilogy, showing just how tragic the Batman's love life could become. Coming in at number 2, we have Selina Kyle, aka Catwoman. Originally just a cat burglar in a slightly more elaborate costume, Catwoman terrorized Gotham City for a while as her heists grew more and more elaborate, and continued to be foiled by the Batman. Over the years, however, their flirty dynamic would expand as Selina began to become more of an anti-hero than an outright villain, to the point that Batman and Catwoman were even set to be married for a long time. And while comic book shenanigans might have complicated their relationship lately, Batman and Catwoman are still one of the best pairings in all of DC Comics. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have Andrea Beaumont, aka the Phantasm. Originally debuting in the animated film Batman: Mask of the Phantasm, Andrea Beaumont was Bruce Wayne's first love, the girl he almost considered abandoning his mission as Batman for before the mission had even begun. Unfortunately for Bruce, Andrea and his relationship was forced to an end by the death of her father, causing Andrea to begin her descent into becoming the vengeful spirit known as the Phantasm. As a villain with an incredibly cool design and a very personal connection to Batman, the Phantasm might not have had as big an impact on the comics, but still remains, in my opinion, the best Batman love story ever told.